Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, How a Good UX Makes Library Users and Staff More Productive and Happier, brought to you by Library Journal and sponsored by Ex Libris. My name is Joshua Bean for Library Journal, here with a few housekeeping notes before we begin today's presentation. So your screen is completely customizable, and you can resize any of the windows and move them around, so feel free to adjust them as needed to get the most out of your desktop space. If you accidentally close any of your windows, you can bring them back up by clicking on the appropriate widget down at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions for our presenters during the webcast, you can submit those through the Q&A window at any time, and we'll address your questions at the end of the webcast. A copy of today's slide deck is available in the resource list window, and you'll be able to download your CE certificate from the certification window once you've met the viewing requirements. You can tweet us about this event at Library Journal with the hashtag LJXLibris. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can click on the Help widget, where you can find system requirements and FAQs. And if that doesn't resolve your issue, you can send me a note through the Q&A window. Okay, so with all that out of the way, I'm going to hand things off to Scott Schutze from Ex Libris to get us started. Take it away, Scott.
Thanks a lot, Josh. I hope everybody is well wherever you may be. As he mentioned, my name is Scott Schutze. I'm the moderator for this session. I'm a product marketing manager here at Ex Libris, part of Claravit. Our presenter today is Yael Beller. She's the product owner at Ex Libris. We're going to field as many questions as you have at the end of the session as time permits. And at the conclusion of the session, we do have a survey we hope you'll fill out. So without further ado, I'll get Yael started. Go ahead, Yael. You can begin.
Thank you, Scott. What is design? People think that design means making something pretty. Here we have a cute mug of a fox, I think. But I want to talk about a little different type of design. I want to talk about user experience design. So in this case, how we're using this mug. And of course, Steve Jobs said it best. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. So I'm Yael Beller. I'm Leganto's product owner. For those of you who don't know, Leganto is Ex Libris course material solution. I'm a UX expert, and in my past, I consulted for various software companies. I studied cognitive psychology, which is how people process information and how they make decisions. And now I apply them in the real world. And I design digital interfaces. But for this presentation, we're going to start with something a little basic and easier, and I'm going to start talking first on physical items. So everything man-made around us is designed. The chair you're sitting on, the building you're at, the mobile phone, every interaction really with your mobile phone, and even the crossroads. And sometimes there is room for improvement in a design. So my job as a UX designer is to make the experience with a product as intuitive and as smooth as possible. And to do that, we need to design with people in mind. So UX is about the fit between user capabilities, their goals, and the environment that they're in. And I'll come back to this slide a little later after I go through a little example, and I promise it'll be clear what I mean. So take a minute and imagine scissors, but really imagine it, have an image in your mind. So I assume you probably imagine something very similar to this. But what if I'm left-handed? Then I probably need a slightly different scissors. So now what we have here are two different users with two different capabilities. One is left-handed, one is right-handed. And we need two different solutions for them. We need two scissors. And what if I have a different task? What if I don't want to cut paper? I want to cut hair. So these are hairdresser scissors. They're very sharp, and you can see that they have a finger brace that helps with precision and with control when cutting hair. Also, one of the blades looks like a comb. So these scissors were designed to cut hair and not paper. And if we think of a different situation, for example, an emergency situation, the scissors we see here, they are used by paramedics when they need to cut clothes off injured people in an environment, in an emergency environment. These scissors are very strong. They can cut through materials like denim, but they're designed in a way that they don't injure the skin. So you can see that their tip is blunt. And also we can see that they have a little bend there in the scissors, and it's really meant for to fit the natural angle of the wrist so that paramedics can cut through the clothes very quickly. So really, we don't have just scissors. They change depending on who is using it, what's the task that they have to perform, or the environment that they're in. And really, my job as a UX designer is to understand really deeply what kind of scissors we need to create. So going back to this slide, we can see that we're looking at the combination or the fit between user capabilities. For example, if they're left-handed or right-handed, we would look into what they can or cannot do. Their goals, what's their task, what are their motivations, why are they doing what they're doing, and lastly, the environment that they're in. And this is true really for everything that we're designing, from the physical objects to digital apps. So we'll basically use the same principles when we're looking at digital interfaces. And now we can look into the digital world. Here at Ex Libris, we're a software company. And when I say digital world, I really mean the laptop you have at your home or the smartphone you have in your hand, maybe self-checkout cashier in the supermarket. And what's unique about this is that they all have complex systems. So we have a lot of users, a lot of different types of users using the same system. So imagine you have to do blood work and you want to see your test results. Personally, me, I like looking at my results on my mobile phone. And this is one way to present my test results. But personally, looking at this, I don't think I would understand anything here. I'm not familiar with the names of any of the tests, and the numbers really don't mean anything to me. I don't know what they mean. And there's a lot of information presented here. And if I got these test results, I would be very confused. So what we can do is we can break it down. So first of all, as a patient, I want to look at each test on its own. We space them out a little bit just to make it easier to look at and to read, to understand. And I also want to know the normal range of my test results. So just a number, just saying 4.5 doesn't mean much to me. I want to know if I'm okay, and I want to know where in the range I am. And also, since my doctor probably checked a lot of things in these blood works, I'm probably only going to be interested in the ones that are problematic. So they really need to stand out. So maybe they should be highlighted, probably in red. I mean, I need a visual cue to know that I need to pay attention to something that is off. And once I found something that isn't right, probably I'm going to be looking, I'm not familiar with the term. they're using. So I'll probably want explanation on what the different tests are and what does it mean that I'm not in the normal range. On the other hand, my doctor, she's looking at the exact same data, but she already knows the tests, what are the tests, and she knows the ranges. And maybe she's actually interested in seeing other related tests, or maybe she wants to see my old tests, my old test results. So she wants to maybe look at a trend, see if something is going up or something is going down. And since she's looking at this every single day, she can actually process more complex visualization. So, which she actually needs to make the right decision. So she needs to make a decision based on a large set of data and not just one single test. And if I would show this screen to a patient, I don't think they would understand anything what happened with their test results. So even though we're looking at the same data, my doctor and I need very different things. In addition, when my doctor is looking at my test results, she's probably sitting at her office in front of her computer. And when I'm looking at my test results, I probably got them on my mobile phone, and I saw them whenever and wherever I got a notification that there are new results. And most likely, I'm not even at 100% attention. Maybe I have my kids running around. So really, my job as a UX designer is to provide the best interface for both of our needs. And there are a lot of complex systems that you can think of that you're probably familiar with. Amazon and Airbnb. Amazon has both sellers and buyers, and Airbnb has hosts and guests. And they all need to accommodate those different types of users. So for us at Ex Libris, we have a lot of user groups, a lot of types of users in the system. So of course, first of all, we have librarians, but our systems also serve researchers, instructors, and students. And even when I just think about it, instructors and researchers could be the same person, but under different hats, they might have different goals. And just when I'm looking at the group of librarians, I know that there are a lot of different roles. So each role would probably have their own goals and their own workflows. So even within one group, there's a lot of complexity. And we don't always have different interfaces for each type. So this is an example. This is Primo, our discovery system. And all of our users are using the same interface. But they have different tasks and motivations, most likely also different capabilities. Their knowledge of how to search in an academic content could vary very greatly. So in one interface, we really have to provide a good solution for both of them, and we need to take into account both of their goals and needs. We understand what are the pain points that they might have. So an example, think about a first-year student who's looking for an article for a class, maybe, versus a researcher that is looking for an article for her line of work. So their tasks are very different. The student is looking for a specific article that he needs to read, maybe a resource on a specific topic, while the researcher is exploring interesting directions on a topic that they probably know very well. And also their capabilities are different. So this could be the first time that the student is looking for material and they're not familiar with academic databases at all. The researcher, on the other hand, they have been here many times. She understands the academic world. She knows what she's looking for when she's looking at results that she would get. So this task for her would have much less effort. in Leganto, Leganto is our course material solution. So instructors build and manage resources list for their courses, and then the library makes those resources available. And then the students can go in and access their material, their course material. So we don't have just different users, but they usually have different digital environments. So on the left here, this is the Leganto that our library staff probably knows. They would go into it directly in the browser, and there they will see all the different reading lists that they are associated with or that they are connected with. But our instructors and our students go to Leganto from the learning management system. Here we have an example of Leganto embedded within Canvas, but there are other learning management systems. But the idea is that when instructors and students are starting their day, they're going into the learning management system. And then they select a course, and they have there all the information that they need on that specific course. Leganto is just one part of it. So when they are arriving to Leganto, when they go to Leganto, they come from a course perspective, which is a different perspective than our library staff. Another thing is that they don't use it as often. So librarians might use Leganto multiple times a month, and they are very familiar with our product. And instructors could even use it once a semester, and that's it. So even though they both have the same task sometimes, which is to build a reading list, instructors and librarians view Leganto in a different context, and also their familiarity with our interface is very different. And not even to mention the students who have a totally different task, and when they're working on the system, and they just want to get their course material, so they're really looking for something else than what our instructors and our librarians looking for when they're entering the interface. So now that you understand a little bit the challenges and considerations that we need to take when we're designing an interface, I would like to give you a peek behind the scenes of the design process. So really, in order to get to design the best solution for our users, we need to look at the world through their eyes. This would help us learn about their tasks and the motivations and the problems that they might have. And I'll walk you through some of the methods that we use as UX designer, and especially here in Ex Libris. So this is our working flow, and I'll walk through each of the steps, and later on I'll dive a little deeper into every step here. So we would start with the discovery phase, which could include interviews and building personas and focus groups. And I promise in a minute I'll dive into that and explain what that means. After that, we start designing. Once we have something designed, we move forward to usability sessions to get the feedback from our users again. After that, we develop it, and then we release it to early adopters. And then there is a release. And I think what you can see here that after the release, this is an iterative process. So even after the release, we're coming back to the discovery phase. And we're going to be doing this again and again. And this is a process that we could do at the product level, we do it at the feature level, really depends on the scope. So when we're starting the discovery phase, we're starting with something very broad. And the purpose of this step is really to uncover what we don't know, uncover things. So it includes learning about our users, and taking a broad look at their workflows and understanding their thought process and how they perceive a lot of the things. So for example, in Leganto, we have 3 types of users, like I mentioned before. And we have a really great relationship right now with the library. And we felt we needed a little more in-depth understanding of our instructors. So we conducted a qualitative study. We interviewed 12 instructors, and we asked them a lot of questions. And when we're conducting these types of interviews, we don't just go and ask them, oh, what are your pain points? What do you need? We ask really high-level, open-ended questions. So we can ask something like, can you describe a typical day? Or tell me how you do a certain task, for example, build a reading list. And this would give us an overview of the flow, regardless to the systems they're using. For example, here, some of the participants in these interviews weren't even Leganto users. So it really gives us an overview of the entire process. We want to know what happens before, during, or after the use of the systems, or what are the different systems that are being used in the process, because all of these are very important for us to understand what are their motivations and like I mentioned before, what are their tasks and their capabilities. So this is a really great way to kind of get a very broad overview. And then the first outcome that we have from these interviews are personas. And personas it's a UX tool that we use. Personas are archetypical users that we use to represent goals and characteristics of a large group of users. So these are not real people, but they represent for us real people. So even when we look at one type of user, when we say instructors, we can see how diverse they are. So for example, one of the characteristics that we would probably refer to is, are they tech savvy or not? So you can see that some are more than other. And we can really tell a story on a persona. What they do, why do they do what they do? And this is a really important tool for us to create empathy for the user, which it's very important for us as UX designers to have empathy for the user. And this is an example of just one persona. This is Occasional Oliver, and I just gave this as an example to show you guys the level of details that we can go into. So we can talk about Oliver's goals and frustrations and what are his key tasks and how familiar he is with the system. And now every time that we think of a feature, we ask ourselves, who's going to be using this? Why are they going to be using this? How are they going to be used this? So this is an example of a persona that doesn't go into our product very often. Occasional Oliver, he doesn't use our product very often, and every time he does, he needs to relearn the system and really relearns how to use it. So, like I said, Occasional Oliver is not a real person, but he represents a pattern that we do see in a lot of our users. So now when we think of this persona, we can look at him separately and ask which features are important for him and how should the interface look for him if every single time he has to relearn the system. So this is our perspective on our system to look through this Occasional Oliver through his eyes. And next up, we wanted to understand the instructors' workflow. So regardless to the system that they're using, we wanted to know which actions they're taking first and what are the next steps that they're taking, and if there are a couple of alternatives for specific tests, test steps. And once we have a good understanding of their work, and more importantly, how they think of their work or how they phrase their work, we can build an interface that would fit their workflow. So not necessarily all of the users will go through exactly the same workflows, but this is a very broad overview for us to see the path that they can take. So, for example, we know that occasionally users might not use some of the advanced functionality. So we do know that this is a broad overview, but not necessarily every single user will go through the same flow. And this brings us to our next method. So when we combine the personas and the workflow that we created, we now have something that we call user journey. So for each persona, we can look at their workflow and divide it into steps. And what we would usually do is we would look at one specific main action that they do in the system. And now, based on insights we have on our personas from the interviews, we have something new. We have their mindset and emotions for each of the states. So if you see the graph that we show here, we can see that there are ups and downs. So for each of the steps that our persona is taking in this workflow, we can see if these are joyful steps or smooth steps for them, or if there are pain points, things that are harder for them to complete or very frustrating. So we can see here very, very clearly where are the issues, where are the areas that we really should focus on to improve our product. Once we have these areas that we know that are issues, what we do is we create a focus group. And this is an example. This is an example of Alma's focus group. Alma is our library service platform. A focus group is not like an interview. So we don't talk to participants one at a time. We gather several customers and we create recurring meetings of the same group. So each participant can bring the perspective of their institution, and really the value of a focus group lies in the group discussion. We ask the group a set of questions on a particular topic and just let them conduct the discussion. And these groups can have monthly meetings, and they really help us understand with understanding critical issues. They help with prioritization of some of the things that we know we need to improve. And this is a really, really good way in a short amount of time to dive really deep into one specific topic. So this is these are the institutions that took part in Alma's focus group. I think what's most important here for me to mention is that we have it's important for us to get different voices into our focus groups. So we always want to make sure that we have participants from a wide variety of regions and cultures, and really we want to cover as much as possible in these focus groups, so that they also help us build our product better. And another method that we use at Ex Libris is the idea exchange platform. I really like this. I really like this platform. It allows, we have this for all of our products, and every user in any of these products can go in and write a suggestion for an idea. And it's very simple. And they just, we have users coming in and suggesting ideas on how to improve our product. Every user can also vote on these ideas. And for me as a UX designer, I would we would go in there and look at some of the comments that we're getting and some of the ideas, we would definitely consider a lot of times development for some of the features that are suggested here. And you can see here an example of an idea that's under review on our end. So this is another really, really great source for us to get feedback from our users on what's bothering them and what we need to probably improve. And now, finally, I can start designing. So now I can take all the feedback I got from the discovery phase and start and build and design a visual solution for our product. We use special tools to create these UX prototypes. And what these prototypes mean, what they do is they really allow us to simulate the final product, but with very little effort. It's fake screens, and we don't have to actually develop it, but it still allows us to show the behavior that we want or how the final product would look like. And the most valuable thing that we do with these prototypes is usability sessions. And so once we finish designing, we go back to our users and we talk to them again. But instead of asking them questions, we'll let them play with our prototype. Here in this image, you can see myself and two of my colleagues, Shelley and Jeremy, were UX experts. And this is a usability session that we are conducting right now for Leganto's new interface. And what we do in these usability sessions is, the idea is to really mimic the natural interaction that the user would have with an interface. So we would give them tasks, mostly main workflows of the system. So for example, I can ask, what would you normally do with an item, or how would you normally do something, and then ask them to try it on the prototype. And what's most important here is to mention that we use a lot of we prompt them to talk out loud and to tell us what they are thinking and what they're expecting. So we would ask questions like, what do you expect would happen next? And what do you understand from the screen, or if there's anything missing? And it's important to say that sometimes we're not testing the users, we're really testing our interface. And we really want to know what's working and what's not working. Another great way to get feedback on a design is Basecamp. So we would open Basecamp boards for discussions on specific topics, or we would open it for a specific project. For example, we usually would open a discussion board for our focus groups. And then we invite users in, and then we can get their feedback on a design. So you can see here, this is from Alma's Basecamp, and they're here suggesting a few designs. I think they're asking here about navigation on a workflow, and very, very quickly we get a lot of comments from our users telling us what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, which suggestion we can offer a few options and ask them which they think is best. So this is another really, really great way to get feedback, immediate feedback, really, on our designs. And something really, really interesting that Explorer team did. Explorer is a new product, and they had to build their platform from scratch, so they didn't have anything to base on. So they invited all of their potential users. And within 8 months, they used Basecamp to show those potential users the design and get their feedback. So they would do a design, show it to the potential users, get their feedback very quickly, and then go back to the drawing board, find another solution if needed, and then go back to Basecamp and get another feedback. And this is a really, really great tool for us to reach out to our community and to our users. And after we developed, we can still go back to our users to get their feedback. And this is an example. We usually, so the Alma team, for example, gives access to early adopters. So some institutions that they work closely with, that they give them access to a sandbox environment. So it's an environment that we're still working on. And they let them play with an actual product that works. And we can get a lot of feedback from them. Alma is using, for example, UserSnap to get feedback. So it's these users can go in, the early adapters, they can go in and they can comment on a specific button if it doesn't make sense or something happened that they didn't expect would happen. So we're really letting them play with it, with a real thing, and get their feedback from it, which is really exciting. And it works. And now we finished development and we can really look at the outcome of all this work and what happens at the other end. So for example, we have Summon, which is another Ex Libris discovery system. And they went through a major redesign at the end. This new UI came out in the end of the year, in the end of 2021. And overall, we can see that the interface is much cleaner. So you can see that the results are, there's less visual overload. Sometimes what happens when we develop more and more features, it's hard to take a step back and see the overload that was created. So always this is a really good opportunity when we're doing redesign to kind of relook at things and ask ourselves if we need to improve them. And another thing that came up in so in the very early interviews and focus groups that were done for Summon, I don't think I mentioned this. The left one is the old UI. The new one is the new UI. I hope it's clear. So one of the things that came up a lot during the initial interviews and focus group, and that we identified was problematic in the flow, was the filtering the results. So after users performed a result, they wanted to filter the result. They performed the search and they wanted to filter the results that they got. So this is a really main action in the workflow. And in the old UI, it was a major pain point. So for example, it was very difficult to filter multiple, to create multiple filters. So for example, if I wanted to search for an article and a book, that was very difficult to do. So really, this is one of the biggest changes that was done here in the new UI, in the new interface, that you can see that they really worked on improving with a lot of usability sessions and going back and forth on finding the right solution for what our users really need. And here we have another really good example. This is these are the results from the search for Summon, and they had a favorites feature. They always have, also in the old version. And this feature would allow you to mark things that you want to save for later, that you can go in and look at them later. So if you have a result that came up, an item that you're interested in, you can mark it as a favorite and add it and go back to it later. And what came up, so one of the things that came up is that during the interviews, people seemed to be very interested by this feature, but it wasn't used a lot. So we know that users were interested in this feature of saving something for later, but there was no usage. And one of the things that came up in the usability sessions is that our users didn't know what this icon meant. There was an icon of a folder, and nobody knew what that icon meant, so nobody used it. And after a few usability sessions, they changed it into a bookmark icon. And this, right away in the usability sessions, you can see that there is a great change. And now today, when we're looking at the usage of this tool, of this feature, there's a great change. So much more of our users are using this feature. So to conclude, there's no one fix for all. And we invest a lot of our time and resources into understanding our users. We want to know what they need, what they can or cannot do. And our role is to provide our users with the best possible product to help them do their job the best possible way.
Thanks a lot, Yael. We do have quite a few questions that came in, so bear with me here for a second. Okay. First question is, Ex Libris has different services. Is there a holistic view about user interface design around all of them, or is it one by one?
So actually, the products in Ex Libris, they kind of grew naturally, and they were designed for different users. So originally, each product had its own UX UI. And over the last few years, what's happening is that we have now a team that's their purpose is really to look at this holistic view, and they support all of the products. For example, we're working now on a redesign for Leganto, and we're working very closely with this team. So there is a team now that kind of does look at this as a holistic view and works with all of the different products together. And I think it's not just for us for kind of giving the same experience throughout all of our products, but it's also very helpful for us as UX designers to really get input from different products and to work together in collaboration to really give the best solution that we can.
Okay. We had a couple of questions with regards to participants in terms of conducting the interviews and then also the focus groups. How do you find candidates for the focus groups or the interviews? And how do people become part of the testing usability sessions?
So usually we would contact, I think there are a few channels. I actually am not I'm not so familiar with the recruiting process, but there are a few channels that we have for our product. So for example, I know we have a listserv, things like that, that we can call out for our customers and ask who wants to join. In some of the conferences that we have, we also ask our customers to join our focus groups and also the interviews that we're conducting.
Okay. This one ties to your industry experience in terms of prior experience working outside the library industry and to your experience working now within the library industry. How do working on UX projects in the library industry compare to working on projects in other industries?
So really, every industry is really a world of its own. So I don't know if I necessarily can say that that there's a difference between the industries. Something that I do know that I've experienced here at Ex Libris is that we have a really big community to reach out for our users. So a lot of the things that I talked about here, I don't normally have access to in other industries. It's really amazing to have, for example, a group of libraries collaborate together to make our product better. So I think this is the really the biggest change on my end, working specifically for the library industry.
Okay, let me read this one. I find that one of the most difficult parts of the UX research process is developing the open-ended questions for users that elicit the kind of info that would be helpful in developing the personas. Would you be willing to share the questions that you use?
So there is a process in building the questions that we use. So I won't always ask the same exact questions, but there's a process for it. So starting with kind of a brainstorming on what we want to know, or the areas that we feel we don't know enough, and usually there's a lot of not so good questions there, but it's just a brainstorming phase, and then we categorize them and make them as broad as possible. I think the problem usually with creating these questions is making them really broad without leading the participant into whatever it is that you want to hear. So there is a process that we would go through in building these questions, which would usually start with, like I said, a brainstorming session, writing a lot of questions, and then kind of taking a step back and seeing how we can ask these questions or category of questions without leading.
Excuse me. I was on mute. Another question with regards to the solicitation of participants in the interview process or the focus groups. Do you see differences in user experience across regions? For example, let's say U.S. versus Europe.
In their willingness to join?
No, just from what people experience from a design perspective, and how do you build your services? How do you design the services around potentially regional differences?
So one of the things that we have, as for differences, one of the things that we have, I think in all of Ex Libris' products, our products are very customizable. So every label, every feature can be activated or not activated. Every label can be changed, and we allow a lot of flexibility to really fit the specific need of an institution, including the cultural or regional differences. So this is one of the things, and I don't think right now I can think of it. There are differences that we are seeing between, for example, libraries or I guess I would say institutions in the UK and in the US, in terms of for us to translate into functionality at the end that we would turn off or on for specific customers. But I don't think, other than that, I would see anything.
Okay. Here's another interesting question. Have you found that that's related to that last question. Have you found that different personas tend to have different preferred devices?
Yes, definitely. One of the more interesting things, we kind of always, we're always surprised when we hear someone, for example, using Leganto on a mobile phone, which for us is always a surprise. But definitely when we look into persona, we look into the device they're using. That's a really important thing for us to look at. And it would also change.
Okay.
It would also change. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It would also change a lot of times the design. So, for example, mobile first would be something that we have to consider if we see that a large majority of users are using the mobile.
Okay. Related to that question is, do you see differences between graduates and undergraduates?
So right now, I don't think we have that data on our end a lot of the times. And we're right now, at least for where I'm focused, we're looking at we're talking mostly to instructors. So we don't necessarily see these differences, but I'm sure there are.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. So the next question is, so thanks for your patience in answering all the questions, and thanks everybody for staying with this session. I see that a lot of people are still here listening to these questions and answers. What are some of the tools that you are using for design prototyping?
So we use XD, Adobe XD, but another tool I really like is Figma, but mostly these two are the main. We use XD.
Okay. And this is a question that just came in that's specific to Primo, so I know that your expertise is not necessarily in Primo, but hopefully you can answer this. In the U.S., what is the current best practice for placement of filters? I know that the position of filters in Primo is customizable with a toggle.
So I don't actually know the specific answer for this, but something very interesting that I have heard, I don't know if it's related or not, from actually when I was working on the summon part, one of the things that they mentioned is that less filters brings up better results. So one of the institutions checked it and looked at and tried to narrow down the amount of filters that they're allowing in the search results when they're after searching, and they actually saw that less filtering options made users actually play more with the filters, and they actually used it more. So it was more helpful for them. So I don't think that answered the question, but I thought it was very interesting to hear.
Okay. Another question that came in is, would this process be basically the same for a service industry rather than applying to a finished product?
What do you mean? What does it mean, like a service industry?
Not sure. Somebody could, if whoever submitted that question could clarify, that'd be fantastic. Another question that came in, and I'll paraphrase this, is that you went over the cycle and you went from the development of a UX design process. And what happens after you launch it? How fast do you start evaluating the results and start, doing your modifications and whatnot?
Immediately after. Once we release a new change or a new feature, we are looking constantly for feedback from our customers. We're looking to see that in our metrics we see that there's more usage. So it's not kind of a we released and now we're done. But really, like I said, it's a iterative process and it's a cycle. We go back immediately to discovery again. Okay.
The follow-up clarification to the previous question, which I'll repeat the previous question and I'll repeat the follow-up as well, was, would this process be basically the same for a service industry rather than applying to a finished product? The follow-up to that was where we're providing a service to the end user rather than products.
So in providing the services to the end user, so I'm not sure I understand.
I would encourage that person to email Yael at her email address and to get further clarification on that question. Well, I don't have any other questions that are in my queue, so thanks a lot for answering a lot of the questions, but more importantly, thank you everybody for submitting a lot of questions and a lot of good questions. Fantastic questions, matter of fact. Yael, if you want to make some concluding remarks around your session and, answer the question how a good UX makes library users and staff, happier and better in what they do, that'd be fantastic, and we can conclude the session.
So I think the main focus is listening to our users and really understanding what their needs, and remembering that, like I said before, there's no one fix for all. And we need to understand that there's there are a lot of different users and they need different solutions. So we really have to know what their needs are and what their capabilities are in order to provide them with really the best experience.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua, you want to interject now?
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Yael, for the presentation. We did want to thank everyone that joined today and attended live, and want to remind you that this webcast and all of our webcasts are recorded, so you can watch the on-demand recording. You'll get an email notification tomorrow afternoon letting you know when that recording is available to watch. And you can watch this webcast and all of our archived and upcoming webcasts in the events and PD section at libraryjournal.com. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.